Hello, hello. All right, we are live, you guys. Welcome to our Hangout this week. Welcome to our 90 Days of Greatness. We have entered into the final third of this program, to the last 30 or so days that we have left of the 90 days that we started with back on January, I think 2nd was our first Hangout. How time flies, doesn't it? And so this week we are jumping into the topic of coaching and moving people up. That's one of the 6 main systems in our business. And I think we've laid a good foundation that now it's time to talk about this. Sometimes we want to just jump to this, right? When you read coaching and moving people up as a leader, you're like, yes, I want to do that. Let's jump to that. But like we have just done over these past 60 days, you do that in your business as well. There's a foundation that gets laid first that creates the opportunity to coach and move people up. Okay, we started that foundation with personal business and personal recruiting and personal guests to meeting. And then we figured out what to do with our new people and covered new consultant systems and how to share the opportunity with people in our unit. So we've laid a foundation that now we are ready to talk about coaching and moving people up. And again, so timely with the cruise qualifications and the focus on building Reds. And now I hope you have positioned yourself after these first 60 days of the year to now be coaching and moving people up. After personal recruiting, now it's time to talk about that. And so the task in your workbook this week is to use some of the things that I'm going to go over right now to use some of those skills and thoughts and ideas to actually have a live conversation with someone in your unit this week using some of the information we're going to go over today. Okay, so that's your task. And my guess is, and my hope is, that you're already in the rhythm of doing that with having coaching conversations with your key and working people. And so that's the task. And then guess what? Next week is the week we actually catch up. I'm going to combine 2 topics into one, and then we'll wrap it up over the next couple of weeks. Okay. So here we go. I want to define coaching first and just go over some basic, I guess, concepts and basic things to understand when we're talking about coaching. Okay, because what do we essentially do as leaders in Mary Kay? What do? We talk to people. I mean, really, if you boil down what you do from day to day when you're in your work zone, in your workflow, you are talking to people. You're booking with people, you're talking to your hostesses, you're talking to your customers, you're talking to your new people, you're talking to your key people. You are having conversations all day long with people. You're talking to prospects, you're talking to guests at meeting, you're talking to people at their debut. You are having conversations all day long, and understanding the coaching way impacts every single conversation you will have for the rest of your life, and not even in your business. You guys, coaching touches how you communicate with your children, with your husband, with friends. It touches how you do conflict management in your life. I mean, it literally touches everything and will positively impact every conversation that you have when you can really internalize and use some of the coaching skills we're going to go over. It's a way of talking to people that honors them, serves them, and loves them. That is the coaching way. And so it is not teaching or telling. It's not about your agenda. It's not about checking in to make sure she places an order. That's what I used to think before I really started to understand the coaching way. I would often have on my agenda coaching calls written down. And really, I was just sort of checking in on them and training them. I didn't understand that not all conversations are coaching conversations, okay? And we as leaders, we coach and we train. And those are 2 different things. And we do both, and both are important, and both play their own role in our business and developing our people, but they're not the same. And that's important to understand. We coach and we train. And what I was really having a lot of as a new director were training conversations where I was telling or teaching or instructing. And that's a part of what we do. There's nothing wrong or bad with them. They're just not coaching conversations. Okay. And we really train first and then we coach. There is some training and a foundation that needs to be laid with our new people. And those first 6 to 8 weeks when a consultant comes in and starts her business, those first 6 to 8 weeks, we are primarily training and teaching and instructing and providing guidance and providing information and tools and resources. And then after those first 6 to 8 weeks, ideally, it moves into a coaching conversation. And so the conversation shifts a little bit. The best coaches have a coach. You learn a lot about coaching by being coached by an effective coach, of course. And so being in a coaching conversation with somebody who's mentoring you helps you not only be more effective as a leader, but it makes you more effective as a coach as you are being coached by someone who's good at coaching. And so you do not, let me jump to this thought about how powerful words are. They really bring life or death. And isn't it interesting that the creator of the universe, what did he use to create everything that we see around us and to create us? He used words, like he spoke things into existence. And I think that's one indication of the power of words and language. And when we use words and language, it impacts people for the better or the worse. And we also, just like our creator, can speak things into existence. And so it's important to understand the impact that your words carry. And learning the coaching way helps you to understand the impact that words carry. It's actually kind of crazy. Even like with DISC, different personalities are going to respond to different words. For example, for a D personality, the word sacrifice has like a positive connotation to me. It's like this noble, honorable thing to do, to make sacrifices for the mission and the goal. Like it's a positive word in my world. To an S personality, that word is going to create some tension in her heart. And that word may be too harsh to use. And so understanding personality styles and what words are going to resonate with their heart, what words are trigger words for them, what words they understand, and then what words are going to be like sandpaper on her heart or create tension or cause her to want to push away. Okay, that is the power of words and the power of understanding the coaching way to know how to use words effectively to always bring life, because that's what we want to do. We want to always bring life and not create tension for people where there doesn't need to be tension. Think of going into a clothing store or a department store and a salesperson comes up to you and says, "Can I help you?" What is always your answer? I mean, have you ever done a little study on this? I mean, what is the always and forever answer? It's no. But someone approaches you who's like, "Hey, welcome to our store. If you need anything, I'll be right over here." Okay, you receive that so much better. And then often I'm like, oh, actually, I'm looking for this and this and this and that. Okay, so one approach with certain words and languaging caused me to want to go like this. No, I don't need any help. And then another approach caused me to be open and want to pursue her or him and get the information that I was looking for. Okay, we do the same. Our words are either causing people to put up a wall or they're causing people to be open to what we're communicating. You want to approach every conversation with a servant leader's mindset. That is the coaching way. You come to serve and to give. You come with open hands. You come neutral, not with clenched fists, not with the agenda to get her to do something that you want her to do, not with your own agenda. You just come open with people. And you want to hold people in this position, and you want to come curious. I think we talked about this either in the career survey and sharing Hangout or in the one I did on Facebook Live, that curious is a good word to internalize when we're having conversations. Like, hey, I'm just curious. It's an open-handed word. It helps you to explore. It helps you to serve and honor people versus coming with an agenda and leading people in the conversation and holding on to a certain outcome that you want. When we do that, when we come with clenched fists, it causes people to go like this. And we don't want people to put a hand up. We want people to be open. So we come curious. We come as servant leaders. Being coached really can help us all to uncover our blind spots. We all have blind spots. And I think we all always will have blind spots. I don't care how high you climb in your career or your level of success. We all just have things we can't see fully, or things about ourselves that we're sort of blind to. And that's okay. It's just the journey. None of us ever arrive. So therefore, we always have some blind spots in certain areas. And coaching, what it does, like peeling the layers off of an onion, it helps you to uncover what some of those blind spots are, so that you can be more effective. And the thing about blind spots is that we're blind to them. We can't see them. And so we need a conversation where we can externally process and verbalize things. And we need people to ask us questions that we don't ask ourselves. That's what the coaching conversation creates. It creates this opportunity for someone to ask you something that you wouldn't have asked yourself. And when somebody asks you a question that you wouldn't have ever thought to ask yourself, it creates a new thought, a possible paradigm shift. It helps to peel back a layer. It helps to overcome limiting beliefs. It helps you to uncover a blind spot. So that's one of the purposes of coaching. And you really coach when there's a big goal or like a big challenge or a point of tension or an obstacle or a limiting belief. Those are the two main times that you coach. So coaching is not always and forever. You'll go through seasons of coaching and needing that. And then you'll be in a season where you're not coached. And then you enter back into a season where you are coached. It's not always and forever. It's when there's a big goal or there's just a challenge, obstacle, blind spot, limiting belief to be overcome, to move to the next level, or to even just move forward. Okay, so remember that with your people. So like if you're not in a regular coaching conversation with some of your key people, that's okay. You don't always need to be. If there's not a big goal or a big point of tension, there may not be the need for the coaching call, or maybe not a regular coaching call. I did not, as a director, have standing coaching calls with my people. That's not something that I did. So anyways, you will not ever coach most people in your unit. Okay, so most people that come in, the majority, you may never have a coaching conversation with. And that is okay. We only coach key people who are working, who have big goals or big challenges to overcome. Don't try to coach everyone. It's not really an appropriate conversation for all people in your unit. Now you will train everyone, and you will teach and instruct and guide and provide information, tools, and resources. You're going to do that for everyone, but you may not necessarily enter into a coaching conversation with everyone. Also, you only coach people who give you permission to coach them. This is a big one. you're only coaching when people are letting you coach them. Now, you may have had a conversation with her, but was it a coaching conversation? Only if she gave you permission to go there. And what I have found is people come into our Mary Kay world often from either another job or corporate America, and the coaching way is not common in corporate America. Now, I think it's becoming more popular and the coaching concept is growing. And the reason why is because it makes people more effective and people are becoming more open to being coached. There was some stat that I read once that it's a growing field and people are becoming more open to it because of how it increases any individual's effectiveness. You just become better when you're coached. So it is growing, but typically if you've got a woman coming from corporate America, she doesn't understand the coaching way and may even be a little resistant to it because things are just different in corporate America. They don't have the culture that we have. They don't know the coaching way. And there often is a boss or a manager and an employee. And that boss and manager is just telling and teaching and training and having expectations, not necessarily coming neutral to a coaching conversation to help that person be the best version of him or herself. They're just giving instructions and that employee is expected to follow and listen and do, or there's a consequence to job security or income or whatever is on the line or at stake for that person. So some of our consultants come into our units not really understanding the coaching way. And I think an explanation of what that is important. Now, some people, it will be very natural to move into a coaching relationship and coaching conversations. And other people, it's gonna be a process for them. And it's gonna take some explaining. Like when we try to have a coaching conversation, they don't even know what we're doing. You're gonna have some resistance to that. So it might even start with, are you open? Are you open to this? Let me tell you about what this is. Are you open to being coached? Sometimes that's the first conversation to have. Also, we cannot coach and lead people that we need. And so when you're coming to the conversation with your own personal agenda or something you want to see happen or an expected outcome, you are trying to coach and lead someone that you need them to do this or you need them to make this choice. And we cannot coach and lead from that position. And we as leaders have to always take personal responsibility. So we're not positioning ourselves in a place of needing people or being desperate for a certain choice we want her to make. That causes us to come to the conversation with clenched fists. And remember, we want to always be open, neutral, curious, with a servant's heart, ready to love and to give. And we have to take responsibility to make sure we're coming to the conversation in this position, not in this position. Some common pitfalls with coaching would be talking or telling too much. And so in a coaching conversation, the person being coached should really be the primary person that's talking the most. And we are just asking some key questions that are guiding that conversation and they're responding. It's a chance for them to verbally process. And so as the coach, we should be talking very little and not telling unless you need to shift into a training conversation. Okay, sometimes you may be talking to a consultant about booking and we're trying to coach her on it when really she just needs some training. She needs some basic information before you can have a coaching conversation about a goal or a challenge that she's facing. Another common pitfall is asking why. Still to this day, I have to break myself of that habit of, well, why do you think that? Okay, why carries a lot of judgment with it and can feel heavy and have some negative connotation with it. Like I don't even want to ask my kids why. And avoid doing that. And we want to stick to who, what, when, where, and how. And pretty much almost in all circumstances, avoid why because of the judgment that it carries. And it's just not as effective. Another common pitfall is asking leading questions. And this was my biggest blind spot for coaching, is asking, wanting to take someone to a certain place or outcome or decision and asking a question to get them there. Does that make sense? It was not until I went to DSWA coaching school that I even realized I was doing that. And that was as a national sales director. It was the first time I attended DSWA coaching school. And realized, because what we do in that class is you do these mock coaching conversations. And that's when that blind spot was uncovered, is that I was asking questions to take somebody somewhere. And so that's more of a clenched fist, like, I want this outcome, I want you to make this decision, versus, again, coming open and neutral and curious. Another common pitfall is moving into counseling, and coaching is not counseling. Counseling is where you kind of look at their past and maybe dig up certain stories that may inform you of why you're feeling this way because of what happened in the past, and then you work from that perspective. Whereas coaching is today, moving forward. We're typically not going into the past, because then it becomes more of a counseling session. And there's nothing wrong with counseling. That plays an important role. I think more people need counseling and professional support in that area. Thank God it doesn't have the stigma that it used to. I think everybody needs a professional counselor and coach, at least at some point in their life, and needs to be open to that professional support. But we're not counselors, we're coaches. And so if it starts to go into those areas that are more sensitive, or if it leaves the Mary Kay realm and it starts to be about her marriage or about her finances, we want to stay within the Mary Kay world and talk about today moving forward. You are her business coach. And if the topic or situation starts to leave that world, that paradigm, then it's becoming something that she's going to need to find and seek some support in another area. You don't want to be your consultant's counselor, not because you don't want to support her, because that's just not what we do. It's not our job definition. We're not trained in that unless you have been trained as a professional counselor. That's not what we train to do. It's not how we lead. But there are professionals who do that. So you would recommend that she got some professional support and have some good books and CDs that if they're not in a position to get and hire a counselor, that you have some resources that you can give her. But don't start talking too much about her marriage or her husband, because that just creates, I don't know, it's just a place you don't want to go with your people, because it's not what we do. Okay. Another common pitfall with coaching is just coaching people who aren't working. Okay, I observe this in directors so much, is trying to coach people who are not key people, or thinking key people are key people who are not key people. And the one way to tell if she's a key person is, did she do a book 5 or book 10? And is she working the power program? That's it. Those are the people who are key people, who are in action, in motion, working the business, working the marketing plan that we have. If she did not have a book 5 or book 10, at least some bookings on her date book, and she's not at least working at the power program level, like, what's there to talk about? And so I noticed directors having these like standing coaching calls with people who haven't held an appointment or party for weeks. And I'm like, what are you talking about? There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to coach around. Yes, can you have conversations about her business and this and that in her life? And yes, it's important to have relationships and conversations, even if she's not in the field. Yes, and sure. But don't chase people with these coaching conversations when they're not really key people. And don't think you've got key people when they're not really key people. Yes, she may have the potential to be a key person. Yes, she may be super sharp and ready right now. Yes, she could probably be a successful sales director. But until she's taking action on that, Like, don't want that goal more than she does. And don't try to hang on to people just because of their potential when they're not taking action on it and wanting it more than you want it for her. Let's move into self-coaching, self-leading, self-motivation. I want to go there. I attended DSWA coaching school. And I'm not trying to talk you into going there. I am just simply telling my story. I'm not necessarily promoting DSWA coaching school, but if you wanted to go, it's awesome. But that's not my agenda, is to promote that. I'm just telling you that I went, and it was a big shift for me. And in coaching school, there's 3 days. Well, it's really 2.5. No, you have a half day, a full day, and then a half day. So it's like 2 days of content. And then I've been 4 times, I believe. So, and one of those times was to advanced coaching school, where you do just a lot more hands-on coaching. And so I've been to 2, 4, 6, 8 days, 8 full days of coaching school. And so we have 1 hour, 1 hour. And so I just want you to know that we're just scratching the surface. And I'm just laying down some basic concepts and understanding that you could take this and you could go have a good coaching conversation, or just at least be able to operate within the basics of an effective coaching conversation that's going to serve your people. But just know that there's a lot more to this topic. One of the best books I've read specifically on coaching, which there's not a ton out there, because I think it's a growing field. And so there's not a ton of like, I want to learn to be a good coach. There are some, but one of the best ones I've read, it's Unleashed by Greg Thompson. Happens to be the name of our national area. I don't know what kind of coincidence that is, but when I was a director, Pam Shaw gave me that as a gift one year. And it was a book that wasn't trendy. Not everybody was reading it. I had never heard of it before, didn't know the author at all. So I don't even know what triggered her to get that book, but she gave me that book. I was towards the end of my directorship, about to become a national, and read it, and it blew my mind. And so that was sort of the start of me understanding coaching, along with the company really embracing the coaching way, starting several years ago. And Amy Gamboyan really led the way with that. And Sean Key has really led the way with that. And we have become a culture that has embraced the coaching conversation, has embraced the coaching way, and has shifted how we talk to people, and has shifted how we've communicated to be aligned with the coaching way. And so if you're looking for a good place to start exploring and developing this area, Unleashed by Greg Thompson is a great place to start. Very inspiring book, and it's a book I've read multiple times and that I go back to and continue to learn from. So that would be a good extension of what we are doing here in our Hangout. So let's talk about just like self-motivation and self-coaching and self-leading, because it starts there. Like, oh my goodness, it's you can't lead others until you lead yourself first. And the same with coaching. You cannot coach others until you learn to self-coach. And in coaching school, that was the first topic that we covered, was self-coaching. Because self-coaching positions you to be an effective coach for other people, and gives you the opportunity to practice your coaching all the time. You are having a conversation all day long in here. And to be more effective as just a person, forget Mary Kay and forget being a leader, just to be more effective as a person is to be your own best coach up here, and to learn to ask yourself questions that bring life, and to use language with yourself that brings life. And to not use why with yourself, to not carry heavy judgment on yourself, but to use questions that help you to move forward and take the next step. and to motivate yourself. That's a challenge of every entrepreneur is creating. There's no structure given to us, okay? So we have to create structure where there is no structure. For our whole lives, structure has been given to us. When we were children, structure was given to us by our parents. When we were in school, we had the structure given to us by our school and our teachers and our coaches and the people who led us. In college, structure and a schedule is given to you, and deadlines are given to you. In your job, structure is given to you. And so then all of a sudden, some of us are entrepreneurs, and after sometimes a lifetime of structure being handed to us and all we have to do is follow, all of a sudden we're like, all right, here I am with no structure. What in the world do I do? We are not used to operating within no structure. And so I think it's the biggest challenge of an entrepreneur. Can often come back to that, is creating structure where there is no structure, which means creating motivation when often there isn't any, right? If we only worked when we were motivated to or felt like it, Lord have mercy, I wouldn't even want to see my life. If I only chose to work when I felt like it or felt motivated, ooh, that would not be pretty. And so therefore, as leaders, as entrepreneurs, we have to be masterful in creating structure and motivation so that we are working, because we have none of that coming at us from the outside. Okay, an employer has the motivation to continue to have a job and get a paycheck. Therefore, they're going to make choices to make sure they have a job and a paycheck. That's their motivation sometimes. We don't really have that same motivation, so we have to learn to create it. And that happens with and can start with and be fueled by effective self-coaching. So I get this question a lot. How do I, especially from like DIQs, sometimes new directors, like, how do I motivate my people? I want to motivate my people. How do I get my people to work? And the very short answer is you don't. Motivation is something that comes from within. And who is the only person that can motivate you? It's you. And yes, other people can inspire, encourage, lead, mentor you. And yes, you can feel motivated sometimes in a group. But when it comes down to it, you motivate you and I motivate me. It comes from within. And so how do you motivate your people? Sister, you don't motivate them. What you do is you motivate yourself. And when you motivate yourself, you just light yourself on fire and let them watch you burn. Let them watch your fire and your flames and what you're creating. It is the best source of motivation for them when they're watching you blow it up. Like, whoa, look at her. Look what she's doing. Look what she's creating. Look at the opportunities she has. Look at the life she gets to live. Like, I want that. Okay, I'm going to do something. Light yourself on fire and let them watch you burn. You guys, it's the best way to motivate your people. Chasing them around, calling them, trying to drag them along with you. Stop, 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 stop. Go be that motivated leader. And who motivates the motivator? The motivator motivates the motivator. So we are charged with this task of motivating ourselves. I read this quote from this. I wish I remember her name. She was a woman who was an entrepreneur. And she said, I only make calls when I'm motivated. I just make sure I'm motivated every morning at 9 a.m. And I'm like, yes, amen. And we can switch that around to ourselves. Like, I only work when I'm motivated. I just take steps to make sure I'm motivated, to make the choices and to follow the plan and to do the work. And so how do you get motivated every day? And I'm just asking you that question without really having the right answer for you. I have the right answer for me. But how do you get motivated every day? What steps do you take? What is your self-coaching, self-motivation, self-care routine that creates a mindset and an environment for you to create structure and create motivation on a daily basis? knowing that action precedes emotion. Okay. And so if we are waiting till we feel like it, my friends, Lord have mercy, nothing's ever going to get done. We cannot wait till we feel like it. We take action, and then that brings the emotion. We've all experienced that before, like, oh, I'm just dreading doing these booking calls. But you sit down and make yourself do it, and you get started, and then like, oh, okay, this feels good. This feels good. Like you start to get into it. It starts to flow. You start to feel confident. You start to feel good about what you're doing. It starts to feel like a game. You start to feel like you make progress. And by the time you're done, you're like, yeah, I am awesome. And your action created that emotion. Nobody starts booking calls like this. Yay! No, we like drag ourselves to the desk and like pick up a phone that weighs 10,000 pounds. That's how we start booking calls. But by the end, we're like, yes, because the action led to that emotion. It's not the other way around. Okay, so sometimes we just got to take the next best step. I talk about this. I've trained on this a lot about, and this is part of how I coach myself, is asking myself the question, what is the next most effective step in this moment? That's like my go-to question when things are like, like if I've got to have a day that just got away from me, or I'm in a moment where I just have more things burning on the stove than I have time to give attention to, or in a moment of frustration or a moment of challenge. I've taught myself, and a part of my self-coaching strategy is just pausing for a moment and thinking through, what is my next best step in this moment? What would be most effective? What carries the most value in this moment? And then at the end of the day, what would I be glad I could say that I did? And it just helps me like recenter my brain. And if I can just identify a couple next best steps, what would be most effective right now? What carries the most value right now? And by the end of the day, what would I be glad I could say that I did? That can just create, it can, like, it's like hitting the reset button. It takes me out of like crazy, hit the reset button, and then I've got a plan. Even if it's a simple plan, which that's usually what it is, and even if they're super small baby micro steps, which usually that's what they are, I can keep moving forward. I can keep rolling the ball forward. I can keep taking the next step. Okay, so that's an example of effective self-coaching, is a simple question that allows you to identify where you can be most effective, what you can do that carries the most value, and you just move the ball forward again. You move the ball forward, you move the ball forward. That's where my Just Go Pee hashtag came from. Was a couple years ago, decided that instead of working out later in the morning when I have my kids, I would get up earlier so the workout's done before the kids are even awake. Okay, so that pushed back my alarm clock quite a bit so that I would have workout and quiet time done and be getting ready by the time the kids woke up. This was a couple of years ago. And so, you know, of course, you're all like motivated to do it the night before. You're like, this is gonna rock. Got my workout clothes. I'm ready. This is gonna be amazing. Okay, it's all amazing until the alarm clock goes off and it's still dark out and it's cold outside and it's warm and comfy in your bed, and all of a sudden that really amazing plan becomes your worst enemy. And I remember the first morning the alarm clock went off earlier than I was used to it going off, and immediately the battle started in my mind. Immediately I'm like, this is stupid. Why did I do this? This is ridiculous. I don't need to work out. Like, forget it. This is not the highest priority. Man, mama needs a rest. I don't need to be doing this. So the battle begins. It's like you versus you in your mind. And I knew at that point, and I knew enough about myself at that point, and I knew enough about self-coaching that I knew my question to ask. It's my go-to question. I'm like, Leah, okay, what's your next most effective step right now? And in that moment, the answer that came to me was just go pee. I kid you not. It was just go pee. Take that next little small step. Working out was still not on the table because you can climb into bed after you just go pee. You can easily climb right into bed. Okay, so working out, still possibly not an option, but I could just go pee, right? Okay, anybody can just go pee. Anybody can take that next step. regardless of the surmounting obstacles or the challenge or frustration that is spinning around us often. And so that's what I did. I got up and I just went pee, and I was sitting there peeing and asked myself, Leah, what is your next best step? Okay. Working out was still not on the table. It was to brush my teeth. So I brushed my teeth and I'm brushing my teeth. Leah, what's your next best step? Okay, put your workout clothes on. I had them laid out the night before when I felt real of this plan. And still in that moment, I mean, you can get back into bed with your yoga pants on. Like, working out was still possibly not an option. And then got my workout clothes on. What is your next best step? Put your shoes on. And by the time I had gone through that process and taken those little small baby steps and gotten those little small wins and coached myself through that challenge and obstacle, I was ready to go. And I was ready to actually execute on the plan I had set into motion the night before. Okay, so stick that one in your back pocket, you guys. Super effective self-coaching question that can create. Let's see. Here's another one. Is when you're feeling like just stuck, like I don't have anybody else to call. I've got nobody to book with. You know, we can make those statements. And in those moments, learn to ask a question that can, again, move the ball forward. And so a common question I ask myself is like, well, what else can I do? Okay, because we often feel like we're at the end of our rope, or we've exhausted all options, or we're not sure what to do next. What else? What else can I do? Who else can I call? And you see how those questions create an openness in your mind to, again, think a new thought, to stay in problem-solving mode versus, I don't know what to do. I've exhausted everything. It helps you go into problem-solving, creativity versus like a throw-in-the-towel mentality. All right, so those are a couple other questions. So let me finish with some basic coaching tips that you can use as you're having conversations with unit members, and you're going to practice on at least one person. And one is to use a coaching call prep sheet. There is an example of one that I use that's in the workbook, where you would actually have the person that you're going to have a conversation with fill that out. Super, super effective. And it has multiple purposes. And one of the main purposes is that it trains your people to coach themselves. And so she's already coaching herself before you even get to her. And often our people can overcome some of their own challenges and obstacles and move forward on their goals before we even have a conversation with them. And it equips people and empowers people to not feel like they need you or need a leader to be successful, but they feel empowered to make choices and decisions and work through things mentally and emotionally themselves. And then you create some really effective leaders in your unit when you teach them to coach themselves. And this prep sheet helps them to do that, because they're thinking through the questions you're going to ask them in advance and coming up with their own answers and solutions. And her answer and her solution is far better than your answer and your solution. Even if her answer isn't right. I learned this from Sean Key. He says, directors need to stop making their people wrong all the time. Okay, so I'm sure you've talked to a consultant. She comes up with an answer and you're like, ooh, I don't think that's going to work, or I wouldn't do that, or that wouldn't be the solution I would have come up with. And just let it be her answer. Let it be her solution. Even if it's wrong or maybe not effective, let her go find out. Okay, if we're always correcting our people or making it seem like our way is the only way, we just create a lot of people who need us, and it stifles their leadership potential. And then it just becomes too much of a burden on the leader to like keep everybody going and always have the right answers and always have the right solutions. I know you would far rather lead a unit of leaders who come up with their own answers, their own solutions, who coach themselves. Now, I'm not saying don't guide and train. So sometimes maybe somebody comes up with an answer, a solution, and it's just an opportunity for more training. Okay. So do offer that guidance and training that they are equipped and have the right resources. But when she comes up with a solution or an answer, let it be her solution and her answer. And maybe she would make it work far better than you ever would. We all think and work very differently and communicate differently. So maybe that's her little sweet spot that's not yours. Okay. And so then also the coaching call prep sheet, it can shorten the conversation because she's already processed through some of this stuff. And it helps to focus the conversation just on what's most pertinent. Because sometimes there's so many things to talk about. We get on rabbit trails and really not even address the main thing. And we get off over here and we're like, wait a minute, like we haven't even really talked about the main thing. So it helps to keep the main thing by using a coaching call prep sheet. And sometimes I don't always use something so formal. Like I'm in rhythm with doing some weekly coaching calls with some of the leaders in my area. And sometimes it's just a text or a Vox that's like, hey, can't wait to connect. Here's what's on my mind to talk about. And I'll give them maybe 1 or 2 little bullet points and then always offer or anything that would feel supportive. Because you want to be having conversations about where they're at, not your agenda. It's about their agenda, what the areas that they need support in. And so, but then I'll sort of guide the conversation or give prep questions for them to think through before we have the phone call, because it helps them to focus, helps them to self-coach, helps to guide the conversation. And so that's not an official prep sheet, but it's at least some thinking and thought that goes into the conversation before it happens. Okay. As far as like structure to my own coaching calls with my unit members, here's how I really have always done it. Is in the beginning of the month, we'll have a conversation. Because I want to hear what create a plan or strategy, talk about that stuff. And then you're really in motion, or at least if they're key people, you're kind of in motion with talking to them every day. Am I right there? Like you're voxing them, texting them, doing career surveys, you're seeing them at the meeting. There's so many reasons throughout the week to make a connection that really with your key people, ideally, it's like an everyday ongoing conversation. I mean, I think of my DIQ right now. We don't always have live conversations, but like we're talking pretty much every day about this or that or this or that or this or that. But then we will have more specific focused live conversations about goals and strategy and where she's at mentally and emotionally. And I like to do those in the beginning of the month and then also in the middle of the month, because the middle of the month is when people are making decisions about what's possible by the end of the month. Have you ever noticed that? Like everybody's excited on the first of the month. That's like the most favorite day in the Mary Kay world. It's the first, and it feels like anything and everything's possible. It feels like you have plenty of time. You're ready. You got a new, fresh, clean start, a new, clean slate. It's like go time on the first. Okay, well, have you noticed that mood can shift on the 15th or mid-month, depending on how the 1st through the 15th went? And I believe people start making decisions about what is or is not possible in the middle of the month. And if they haven't gotten a strong start, they start to question their goals. They start to throw in the towel. They start to reevaluate. And they start to forget that, no, it's not we only have 2 weeks left. It's like, oh my goodness, I have 2 weeks left. I have 2 weeks to work. I have 2 weeks to make things happen. But often we think of it as like, oh my gosh, I only have 2 weeks left. And so I want to catch my people, my key people, my working people. I want to catch them mid-month and have another conversation about where they're at mentally and what's possible in the next 2 weeks. And that's really my rhythm. It's like a round of coaching calls in the beginning of the month to set up the month, to start the month strong, and then a round in the middle of the month. And then, of course, as you're closing out the month, you're having conversations as you need to. And that's different with every person. That's another reason I've never had standing coaching calls with my people or regular ones, and I don't think that that's bad. I'm actually doing that right now with my directors, but did not do that as a director with my consultants, only because different people needed different things. And I never really drew a line in the sand of like, if you are a key working person, here's how I'm going to coach you. I really was a little more flexible and spontaneous with that, depending on what she needed. Coaching is one of those things that's like, what's most important doesn't always scream the loudest. Have you ever heard that phrase before? What's most important doesn't often scream the loudest. And I think in the world of Voxer and text, that it is easy to think we are having effective conversations using those tools, but coaching and a live conversation is just far, far different. And so don't let Voxer and text replace effective conversations, because they're important to have, but they don't always scream loud because we have so many other ways to communicate that we think that's sufficient and effective. And a lot of times it is, but not to the point that we're eliminating like real life conversations, and even better than that, like eyeball to eyeball conversations and connections. I had to learn in my coaching calls to slow down, to speed up. I had to like slow down my agenda. I had to slow down the conversation to speed up the trust and rapport, and also speed up opening the door to what they really needed the most support with. A blind spot for coaching before I really learned what coaching was is like, I had these list of people to call. I had a certain time frame to do it, and like, boom, boom, boom. I'm going to call them. I'm going to talk about my agenda. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to call the next person. I'm going to talk about my agenda. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to call the next person. I'm going to talk about my agenda. And I had to really slow that down and like tame that down and realize that that really wasn't super effective for developing my people. Here's another coaching tip, is be okay with the precious pause, the pregnant pause, or the silence. Silence is good. When you ask a question, maybe she doesn't answer right away, or maybe there's a lull in the conversation. That gives both parties, both the coach and coachee, a chance to think. And thinking is good. And thinking leads to solutions and answers. And aha moments. And so don't feel like you have to fill every second with words. And if there is a pause, just let it be. Let it be for a minute. Just feel awkward in the silence for a minute, because sometimes we'll pop her thought bubble, okay? So there's a pause and silence. She's thinking, maybe you're thinking, and the pause and silence is awkward. So we say something and it pops her thought bubble that she's forming. So just let her form the thought bubble, okay? And sometimes when there's that pause, I'll sort of let it be. And sometimes I'll even say like, well, I'm not really sure where to go from here, or where to take the conversation from here. Sometimes I say that. And I just let go of the need to have the perfect question or the exact right thing to say. Just let go of that, because you're just not always going to all the time. And if we're so fixated on like the next best question and the perfect question or the most profound thing to say, we are not in the moment. We're always like 5 steps ahead in our brain, and then we miss things. And if you're just in the moment and let it be, slow down to speed up, embrace the pause, don't pop her thought bubble, it can be a more effective conversation. So don't try to fill in all those silent spots. You don't have to have the answers, okay? I would often dread coaching calls that weren't really coaching calls, they were training calls. But I would dread them because I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna have to like figure out how to make her business work. I'm gonna have all the right answers that are gonna be the perfect answers for her so she can be successful. Like I carried the burden of like having the perfect right answers and like making sure she was successful. And that's not how leadership goes. And so I let go of like being the Mary Kay answer lady, and having like, oh man, I can't book with anyone. What do I do? And I'd be like, oh man, like, I don't know. What do you do? Crap. Okay. Let me think. And then I would just strain to think of every possible thing she could possibly do to get bookings, when really all I needed to ask her is like, well, hey, I'm curious to hear from you. What do you feel like the biggest obstacle is? Or what do you feel like the next best step would be? Or where do you feel like things are maybe in the conversation you're having with people that maybe they're not open to what you're offering? Okay. So I'm just exploring with her. Well, like, what do you think? And so often you'll come to a solution and it'll be her solution versus racking your brain for all these ideas that could totally not be effective for her at all. Okay, so you don't have to be Mary Kay answer lady, and you can let go of the pressures to have all the right answers. Okay. And then often there are issues below the issues. Okay, that's why we want to slow down sometimes too, is because like there's an issue or a challenge brought up, but that's not even the real one. Okay, there are issues and challenges below the issues and challenges. And so you want to slow down to speed up and ask questions so that you get to maybe the real core of what's going on. And it takes some time and it takes some questions to really get there. You want to communicate in her personality style. That's why we learn DISC and why we talk about it and why we really try to master DISC, because it's like everybody speaks a different language: Dutch, Italian, Cantonese, and Spanish. That's DISC. So we're all speaking our own language. And when we try to speak our language to someone who speaks a different language, what happens? Yeah, there's a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding. And so you want to start to learn the languages of all the personality styles, not just yours. So with a D, you can use the word sacrifice because that's going to inspire her. But with an S, you're going to avoid that word because it seems too harsh for her. And we want to learn to speak their language. And that's a whole another training topic, is learning the languages and coming as a servant leader to people, willing to speak her language, even if it's a foreign language for you. And knowing enough about the other languages and personality styles that you're able to serve those people and not make everyone fit into your box and your paradigm. It's a way to honor and serve your people. You want to avoid the word you. Well, like, you told me you were going to book at this time and didn't. Like, you may as well just like point a finger at her. You want to avoid the word you. And so maybe if you're having a tough conversation, it might sound like, well, hey, I know last night we talked about you wanting to do coaching or booking calls to get some stuff on your date book. And I know that didn't happen. So I just wanted to see if we could explore that and maybe find out what happened and maybe evaluate that to see where you could be more effective or at least take the next step. Okay. So instead of pointing a finger, it's like arm in arm. We're in this together. Let's explore it together. Let's create solutions together. Okay. So you and why, you want to just kind of cut those out of your questioning and your comments to her. And then a last couple things I say as we reach our hour mark is, I don't even know how to describe it, you guys. It's just this weird harmony of being all in for your people, like all in for them, believing in them, loving them where they're at, loving them unconditionally, like just all in, even when they're not all in, but just all in for your people, yet with like open hands. and emotionally, and for the lack of a better word, someday I'll find a better word to use, but sort of emotionally disconnected from what they choose to do or how they perform, knowing that they could become a director or they could quit tomorrow. And we have to be okay with either. We have to be okay with either. And we cannot love our people based on their performance or their actions or their behavior, that we love people where they're at and we have open hands, that if she chooses to quit tomorrow, our world doesn't crumble around us. And it doesn't impact our relationship and future friendship with her. Like, I only love you if you're in Mary Kay. I only support you if you're doing with your life what I think you should. Okay, we can't come to the table with that. That's like a clenched fist. We've got to have open hands. And so it's this odd harmony of like being all in for our people, full belief, serving them, loving them, leading them, without needing them or being desperate for them to do what we want them to do. And okay, if they choose to not perform at the level we think they should, or they choose to walk away, or if they choose to not be in Mary Kay, we're open-handed and we still love them where they're at. And we're neutral. That is a servant leader coach's role with our people. And how do you get there? Lord have mercy, I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't fully figured that one out. I'll tell you a quick story to finish this. I was driving down the highway to go to my meeting. I live in Dayton, Ohio, and really built my business in Cincinnati, which is about 45 minutes to an hour from Dayton. So I can't even tell you the miles I racked up driving from Dayton to Cincinnati. And I happened to have my meeting in Cincinnati. And so I was driving to my meeting, my weekly meeting, and I was in a window where we were finishing our national area, you guys. We were there was probably maybe 6 months until we were going to finish, and really 3 months from the original date that we really pushed to finish. But then it happened a few months after that. And so I'm in that window of time, and I knew I had a coaching call with one of my DIQs. And I sort of knew some stuff was going on in her personal life that was, at the least, a distraction. At the best, it was a distraction, and actually it was far more than that. But just had some personal stuff going on, and I knew that. And so I sort of had a feeling what the call might be about. But I got on the phone. I'm talking with her, driving down the highway. And after just initial like greeting each other on the phone, she said these words, which I'll never forget. She said them just like this, and just as direct as I'm about to say it. She said, "Leah, I'm out." And I knew what that meant. She was not going to finish DIQ, and she was not going to become a director. And I knew, because of what was going on, that it wasn't going to take just a good old pep talk to get her back in. Like, I knew with certainty that she was out. And so we had 20 on the list, and you need 20 to finish. And there was not 21 on the list. There were 20, and she was one of the 20. And so that took our 20 down to 19. And you don't finish a national area with 19. You finish a national area with 20. And so I understood the significance of what she was saying, and she understood the significance of what she was saying. Then everybody was clear on what that meant. And what it meant is we weren't going to finish within the time frame that was the area goal. Okay, not just my goal, and not just her goal. She was all in for this, you guys. She just had life circumstances that took her down a different path. So she says, "Leah, I'm out." And I could feel like the tears welling up. And I'm not a big crier, but like I could feel the tears just like welling up in my eyes. And we sort of had a conversation, and she shared a little bit, and I shared a little bit. And I told her I was pregnant with my second. I was pregnant with Aria. So she was one of the first people I told I was pregnant. And so we celebrated that on the phone. And then I hung up. And she was out, you guys. She was out. We were finishing a national area, and we had lost one. And it's not every day that you can just easily replace a DIQ. And not just a DIQ, you guys, there was nobody more all in for this goal than her. There was nobody more prominent in my unit at that time than her. She just had a personality that preceded her. She loved people. She loved Mary Kay. She was at every meeting, every event, earned everything. She was the encourager. She was the voice. She was the person in our unit. Okay? That was her. She just had life circumstances that took her a different route. She didn't even want to go that route. She wanted to be a Mary Kay, but she had life circumstances that took her a different way. And so I remember hanging up the phone, like, what do you do in that moment? But I don't know. I don't know what it was, but in that moment, I almost like a poof of air, like it was gone. It was gone. And I was okay. And I just sensed God in that moment saying to me, like, Leah, I've got you. I've got this. I've got your area. I've got this finish. I've got your people. I just sensed him like speaking that to me, and like it was gone. And I was okay. I was totally okay. And what did I ask myself? Okay, you know my like key question. So what is my next best step right now? And in that moment, it was to go have an awesome meeting and go love my people, serve my people, go recruit some people, go have an awesome meeting. And that's what I did. Went and had an awesome meeting. And long story short, or to wrap up the story, there was somebody I had recruited a couple months earlier that she was the only one not on our list of 20, because you know you have like the list written out, like in ink, in blood, like that list is written out. The flyer was made, the faces were on there. There was a girl I recruited just a few months prior. So she was a new consultant. She was the only one who wasn't on the list at that time who was a part of our finish. And so God already had this other gal. He had already brought someone. He had filled that gap with somebody else. There was another brick that was going to go into the foundation when another brick had to leave. And so there's so many teachable moments to this story. And one of them is like, I was all in for her, yet had to be emotionally detached. Because you know how that can like rock your world? Like it could have rocked my world, like in a really negative way. But I was able to, in the moment, just like let her go, open hands. I didn't like cling to her. I let her go, and I trusted and stood on faith that there was another way. Like, who else? What else can I do? What's my next best step? Okay, see how those questions can allow us to move forward, and new opportunities always open. New things happen, new people come, new ways are formed when the way that we thought it would work doesn't. And so it creates newness and freshness. And that is always there for us, like a new way, new opportunity, new people. It's always there for us. But we've got to know how to take the next step and move forward and not cling to our people too tightly or cling to an outcome too tightly. So there you go, my friends. Coaching and moving people up. We like tickled the surface. We didn't even scratch it, you guys. We like tickled the surface of the coaching way. And I hope you can take a few little nuggets and have some good conversations with your people and continue your journey on becoming a more effective coach. Grab the book. I also have a YouTube video in our pinned post in the announcements. It's Unleash the Coach in You. That is another resource for you to dig into so you can continue your education and skill development in this area. All right, I love you guys. I'll see you here next week. Same time, same place. Have a good day.